Dog owners, listen up. A judgment from the Supreme Court of Appeal will have serious implications for dog owners whose pets attack people. The ruling comes after a man was attacked in the street by 3 dogs that had escaped from their property. He was left seriously injured and lost his arm as a result. The court found that the dog's owners are liable for paying the attack victim damages. I'm joined now by legal expert Ulrich Roux. Ulrich, as always, thanks very much for joining us. Unfortunately, dog attacks are not uncommon, and in serious cases they often result in legal action. But tell us a little bit about what sets this case apart.
Hi, good evening, Hanley. Thank you for having me. It is certainly a very interesting judgment handed down by the Supreme Court of Appeal on 11 September. And the gist of the judgment saying that even though an owner of a dog was not at fault, so the owner, there's no negligence or recklessness that needs to be proven against the owner, the mere ownership of the dog is enough for a victim of a dog attack to claim damages from that owner. So certainly, a stern warning being made by the court for all dog owners to ensure that, if their dog is a dangerous dog, then it is locked up or kept away from a position where it could maybe cause harm to innocent people who walk past.
So has this defence or a ruling been made use of before? Is it something that's different or noteworthy?
Yes, so it's based on an old Latin principle in our law called the actio de paupere, and what that basically states is that when you do own a domestic animal, then you should retain full responsibility for that animal regardless of the circumstances. The court made it very clear that the only way in which a dog owner can escape liability if there's been an attack on a victim is if the victim provoked the dog. So in other words, he caused the attack to take place. Secondly, if the victim was not in a place where he or she shouldn't have been. So in other words, if the victim climbed over the wall of a property and the dogs then attacked him, then he would not have a defense to his injuries. And thirdly, if possession or the ownership of the dog has passed to a third party and through the third party's negligence, the dog attack took place. So, the court also made it clear, and very interestingly so, that there's more and more urbanization taking place, more people living in cities, and we cannot have a situation where citizens of South Africa walk the streets in fear of being attacked by a dog, and thus dog owners should take all necessary precautions in order to avoid such attacks from taking place. And interestingly, in this case, a very severe attack by 3 dogs on the victim. He lost his arm as a result of the attack, and the Supreme Court of Appeal confirmed the damages that was handed down by the High Court in the amount of 2.4 million rand. So certainly, a very substantial order made there by the court.
Ulrich, in this case, the property owners, I believe, had secured their property, so there's no way for the dogs to just randomly escape on their own. They claim, because they weren't home at the time, that somebody must have tried to illegally gain entry into the property, and in that doing so, they had damaged the gate through which the dogs escaped. So, the owners of these dogs saying, well, how can we be held liable? And yet the victim saying, well, I lost my arm. These are your animals. Do you think, given the circumstances, this judgment was fair?
Yes, I do, because, if the court had accepted that defense, that someone must have, tried to break into the property and left the gate open, then it would leave the gate open for any future claims for the owners of the property and of the dogs, just to claim that, well, it wasn't our fault that the gate was open. It wasn't our fault that the dogs escaped from the property. It wasn't our fault that someone got injured as a result of the dog attack. And the court making it clear that no fault needs to be proven when there is a victim of a dog attack. Mere ownership of the dog makes the owner of the dog responsible for any damage that dog causes, except for the 3 defences which I mentioned earlier.
Getting back to those 3 defences, Ulrich, the one you mentioned was that if a dog is, or an animal is provoked, then that defence would not apply. But often in circumstances where these attacks happen, there aren't necessarily witnesses or CCTV or street cameras. How would an owner prove that the dog had been provoked?
Yes, certainly very difficult. The onus of proof would be difficult. I agree with you. But I do think that, in today's day and age, CCTV cameras are becoming more prevalent. And in this instance, if you can prove that the victim was indeed provoking the dog and that led to the dog attack, then your defense would be successful. But unfortunately, it's the old dictum in our law that he who alleges must prove. So if you allege that the dog was provoked and that led to the attack, then you must be able to prove that. And in the absence of such proof, the court will find against you.
Certainly a victory in this case for the victim. Certainly 2.4 million, no valid exchange for having lost an arm, but justice seems to have been done. Thank you very much, as always, for that insight, Ulrich Roux.